I still remember the sound of the room more than the music. Not the piano, not the clinking glasses, not the laughter that rose and fell like waves. What I remember is the hum, that low, crowded hum that makes you feel small. Like everyone belongs to something except you. That was the feeling I had on the night my son, Aaron, got married. The hall was beautiful. Tall white curtains, soft gold lights, roses arranged like they had been touched by someone gentle. A perfect setting for a perfect day. And for a moment, just a moment, I believed I belonged in that picture. I was sitting at a round table near the back. Not where I imagined I'd sit at my only child's wedding. Not close enough to see his smile clearly. Close enough, though, to see the way Kimberly's family floated around him as if they owned the air in the room. Then the DJ tapped the microphone and announced that the couple had prepared special gifts. Gifts, he said, for the people who helped bring us to this moment. Everyone clapped. I clapped too, because that's what you do when you don't want people to see your nervous hands. One by one, the servers came out with little boxes tied with satin ribbons. The bridesmaids got bracelets. The groomsmen got watches. Kimberly's parents got crystal frames with gold lettering. And then a boy, maybe 16, walked toward my table. He didn't smile. He didn't say a word. He placed a small, plain, white envelope in front of me. No ribbon. No box. Just an envelope you could buy in a pack of 50 for $3. I remember the weight of it. Or rather, the lack of weight. It felt empty. I opened it slowly, trying to hide my shaking fingers. Inside was a strip of paper. No card. No message of gratitude. Just 4 words, typed in a bold, black font, "You shouldn't be here." For a moment, the room didn't exist. All I could hear was my own breath, thin and ragged. I looked up, trying to find Aaron's eyes across the room. He saw me. He saw the envelope in my hand. And instead of coming over, he looked at Kimberly. His face tightened like he wanted to stand up, but he didn't. She gave the smallest shake of her head. That was when I knew. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't an accident. It was a message. A warning. The first door closing. And I had no idea how many more they planned to shut behind me. Before we go on, tell me where you're listening from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories coming soon. People often assume a betrayal begins with a loud moment, a shout, a slammed door, a final argument that echoes for years. But mine began quietly, in the soft corners of my life, long before the wedding, long before that envelope. My name is Helena Brooks, and for most of my adult years, my world revolved around a small, single-story house on Maple Ridge Lane. Nothing impressive. Nothing fancy. Just a modest place with peeling paint on the porch rail and a stubborn kitchen window that sighed every time it closed. But it was mine. Every brick, every shingle, every inch of it paid for with the overtime hours I took after my husband died. I raised my son, Aaron Brooks, in that house. He took his first steps across that uneven living room floor. He did his homework at the wobbly dining table I refused to throw away because it held too many memories. And every Christmas morning, no matter how tight things were, I hid a little wrapped box under the tree just to make him smile. After my husband passed, I kept everything running with a blue ledger notebook, my own personal system. Every bill, every payment, every receipt, tucked neatly inside. It made me feel steady, like I still had some control in a life that had taken a sudden turn. I never remarried. I never took fancy vacations or bought things I didn't need. Every choice I made revolved around giving Aaron a life with stability, even when I didn't always feel stable myself. If someone had told me then how much all of that love would later be twisted, how the place that held our happiest memories would become the center of a quiet war, I don't think I would have believed them. But the truth is, betrayal doesn't arrive fully grown. It starts small. Just like this. I still remember the first day Aaron brought Kimberly to my house. Kimberly Hart, now Kimberly Brooks. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, the kind that makes the curtains glow and the air feel soft. I had spent the morning cleaning, not because the house was dirty, but because mothers never want their children's partners to see anything out of place. I even baked a lemon loaf, the kind Erin used to ask for after school. When they walked in, Kimberly smiled politely, but her eyes told the truth. They scanned the living room like she was assessing it, cataloging flaws I had stopped noticing years ago. The worn couch. The faded rug. The family photos leaning a little crooked on the wall. She didn't say anything harsh. People like her don't have to. Their silence does the talking. Erin, excited and trying too hard, gave her a little tour. "This is where Mom keeps everything," he said, opening the cupboard where I stacked my dishes. She peered inside and nodded, the way someone nods at an old thrift store. We sat down for tea, and conversation drifted to wedding ideas and future plans. Kimberly kept mentioning their life and their home, using phrases like modern space and fresh environment. And at one point she laughed softly and said, "Erin's outgrown this place, haven't you?" Just a small sentence. A passing comment. But Erin laughed with her. And something inside me tightened. Not jealousy. Not fear. Just a quiet understanding that she didn't see this house, or me, as part of Erin's future. I brushed it off, sipping my tea and smiling. But somewhere deep down, a tiny thread had already snapped. And I didn't even hear it. The wedding planning started a few months after that first visit, and at first, I told myself not to expect much. Times had changed. People did things differently now. But I still believed, maybe foolishly, that a mother would have some place in her son's wedding. I learned I was wrong in the most subtle way. It began with little silences. Missed details. Plans Erin mentioned only after they were already set. One afternoon, he stopped by to pick up a package and casually said, "Oh, Kimberly found the perfect venue. We booked it last week." Last week. No call, no text, no "what do you think, Mom?" Still, I tried to keep my face warm, my voice steady. "How lovely," I said. But the real sting came when I found out about the group chat. A cousin mentioned it during a family barbecue. "Oh, the wedding chat is so funny," she said. "Kimberly sends updates every day." I blinked. "What chat?" She looked surprised. "The planning chat. Everyone's in it, except," she cut herself off too late. That night, I stared at my phone, scrolling through old messages from Erin, wondering how I became someone unnecessary in my own son's milestone. I finally asked him about it the next day. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Kimberly's family is paying for most of it, so they're kind of coordinating everything." Coordinating everything. Such a neat, tidy phrase. He didn't mention the $5,000 I had quietly given him to help, money I had saved over years, dollar by dollar. Money that apparently meant nothing. I nodded, pretending not to feel the weight of being gently pushed aside. But deep down, something kept whispering, if this is how they plan a wedding, what else are they planning without you? It was a quiet evening when the first real warning slipped out, disguised as casual talk, wrapped in what sounded like concern. Erin had stopped by after work, still wearing his badge and looking tired. We were sitting in the living room, the same spot where he once built blanket forts and practiced spelling words. He leaned back on the couch and said, "Mom, Kimberly and I have been talking about getting a bigger place. Something modern, more space, you know?" I smiled, because that kind of dream is natural for a young couple. But then he paused, choosing his next words too carefully. "Have you ever thought about what you'd want to do later on? When you're older?" Older. As if I was already halfway out the door. I set my tea down slowly. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then added, "Well, Kimberly thinks maybe selling this house could help everyone. Fresh start for all of us." Fresh start. Those two words again. Before I could respond, Kimberly's voice floated in from the hallway. She had let herself in, something she was starting to do too easily. She smiled that polite smile that never reached her eyes. "We just want you to be comfortable, Helena. And this house, it's a lot to maintain." My house. The one I scrubbed, painted, repaired, and held together through widowhood and worry. A lot to maintain for me, but apparently useful for them. I felt a prick of fear, small, sharp, but unmistakable. Something wasn't right. I forced a smile and changed the subject, but the question kept echoing in my mind long after they left. Why were they thinking so much about my future, and my house? The rehearsal dinner should have been a warm night, a gathering of two families coming together. But from the moment I walked in, I felt like a guest who had wandered into the wrong event. The room was arranged with long tables covered in white linen, gold candles flickering gently. Everyone seemed to know exactly where to go, except me. I scanned the place cards, expecting to sit near Aaron, maybe at least close enough to hear him laugh. My name was nowhere near the head table. Instead, I was placed at a small table tucked against the wall, squeezed between two distant relatives who looked just as confused as I felt. At first, I told myself it was a simple oversight. People get busy. Mistakes happen. Then the slideshow began. It was supposed to be a celebration of Aaron's life, baby pictures, birthday candles, awkward school photos, all the little moments that make a childhood whole. But when the photos appeared on the screen, something felt off. There were dozens of pictures of Aaron, Halloween costumes, soccer games, beach trips. But in almost all of them, I wasn't there. Not cropped out entirely, just missing, as if I hadn't been part of those days at all. One photo finally showed us together, a Christmas morning from years ago. But it flashed by so quickly I barely recognized it before the next image replaced it. Paula, Kimberly's mother, caught my eye then. Her smile was tight. Polite. Almost satisfied. Peter Hart stood beside her, smiling like he approved of the whole arrangement. I sat there, hands folded in my lap, feeling a strange emptiness settle inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Just a quiet, aching question: how do you disappear from your own son's story while you're still alive? 2 days after the rehearsal dinner, I stopped by Aaron and Kimberly's townhouse to drop off a small gift, a simple embroidered handkerchief I had worked on over the past week. Nothing expensive. Just something personal, something from a mother's hands. When I arrived, the door was open just a few inches. I knocked lightly, expecting Aaron to call out. He didn't. Instead, I heard Kimberly's voice drifting from the hallway. Sharp. Clipped. Unfiltered in a way she never allowed in front of me. I'm not letting his mother ruin the wedding vibe, she said. She's already too much. The seating chart is final. A pause. Then Aaron's voice, quiet, hesitant. I know, but she's still my mom. Kimberly sighed loudly, the kind of sigh meant to convey patience running out. Exactly. Your mom. Not mine. And I'm not spending our big day babysitting her feelings. The words hit me harder than I expected. Not because they were cruelty I could recognize. But because of the certainty in her tone. Like she had already mapped out where I did and didn't belong. I stepped back slowly, careful not to make the floorboards creak. The last thing I wanted was to hear the shift in their voices when they realized I was listening. For a moment, I stood there on their porch, holding the small handkerchief like it was made of glass. Then I placed it gently in the mailbox and walked away, telling myself I must have misunderstood, twisted it, taken it too personally. Mothers do that sometimes, we bend the truth to protect our children. But as I reached my car, I felt a cold certainty settle in my chest. Kimberly wasn't just planning a wedding. She was planning a future without me in it. The morning of the wedding felt strangely quiet. It was early October, the kind of morning where the air still can't decide if it's summer or fall. Not peaceful, just quiet in a way that made my chest feel tight. I woke up early, earlier than I needed to, and sat on the edge of my bed for a long moment before reaching for the dress I had laid out the night before. It wasn't anything extravagant. A soft blue dress with simple sleeves, the kind of outfit that doesn't demand attention but still shows care. I curled my hair the way Aaron always liked when he was little, loose waves. I told myself it would make him smile. He stopped by just before leaving for the venue. Still in sweatpants, holding a garment bag, rushing like the world was pulling him forward faster than he could keep up. When he walked into the room, I felt this small, aching hope rise inside me. Look at you, I said softly. My handsome boy. He smiled, but it was tired, distracted. Not the warm kind he used to give me. Mom, everything's a little crazy today, he said, rubbing his forehead. Just try to go with the flow, okay? Kimberly's family planned a lot of stuff. I nodded, though something in his voice didn't sit right. A rehearsed tone. Like he was repeating instructions someone else had told him. I tried to ask where I'd be sitting, if I could come backstage to take a photo with him before the ceremony. He hesitated just long enough for my heart to notice, then said, "We'll figure it out there, okay? Don't stress." Before leaving, he paused at the door. For a second, he looked almost guilty. His mouth opened slightly, like he wanted to say something important, something real. But then he closed it. And he left. That was the moment I first felt the truth tug at the edge of my heart. I was walking into a day that wasn't made for me. When I arrived at the venue, the sun was still bright, casting long shadows across the walkway lined with white lanterns. Guests were already gathering at the entrance, laughing, hugging, taking photos in front of the flower arch. It looked like something from a glossy magazine, perfect in every way. I walked inside with a hopeful smile, telling myself that no matter what had happened during the planning, today would be different. Today, I was the mother of the groom. Surely, there would be a place for me. A young woman with a clipboard greeted me. Name, she asked without looking up. Helena Brooks. She scanned the list. Her eyebrows knit together, just slightly. Oh, you're seated toward the back. Table 12. Back. Table 12. A location she pointed to with a forced smile, far from the head table, practically pressed against the wall beneath a loudspeaker. I looked at her again, thinking maybe it was an error. I'm the groom's mother, I said gently. She blinked, lips tightening. Yes, ma'am. This is the arrangement approved by Kimberly's mother. Kimberly's mother. Always in charge. Always the one approving everything. I took a slow breath, trying to swallow the feeling rising in my throat. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to embarrass Aaron. So I walked to table 12, pretending not to notice the surprised looks from a few distant relatives sitting nearby. The tablecloth had a small stain near my seat. The chair wobbled when I pulled it out. It was clear no one had cared enough to check. I sat down quietly, smoothing my dress over my knees, telling myself I was fine. But a small voice inside whispered something I couldn't ignore anymore. They hadn't forgotten me. They had placed me exactly where they wanted me. When the ceremony ended and everyone drifted into the reception hall, I tried to reset my heart. The music was soft, the lights warm, and for a moment, I allowed myself to believe I could still enjoy the night. Maybe the seating was a misunderstanding. Maybe things would feel different once the food was served and people relaxed. But then the DJ tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, the bride and groom have a special surprise for the people who brought them to this moment. A wave of cheers filled the room. Servers appeared from the back, each holding small boxes tied with satin ribbons. They moved gracefully, placing gifts at the head table, then at the bridesmaid's table, then the groomsmen's. Everywhere I looked, faces lit up. Excited hands untied ribbons. People laughed, hugged, wiped emotional tears. And then a young server, barely more than a boy, approached table 12. But he wasn't carrying a box. Just a small, plain white envelope. He placed it in front of me without a word. His eyes darted away, and he left so quickly it felt like he didn't want to be seen near me. My heart thudded. The envelope felt too light, too thin, as if it contained nothing at all. I opened it carefully. Inside was a narrow strip of paper. 4 words printed in bold, black type, "You shouldn't be here." For a moment, everything around me went muffled, the music, the voices, the clinking glasses. I looked up instinctively, searching for Aaron. He saw me holding the envelope. His expression flickered, guilty, fear, something else I couldn't name. Kimberly glanced over, saw the envelope, and gave him the smallest, surest shake of her head. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a cruel joke from a distant relative. This was deliberate. Intentional. Approved. And I sat there, hands trembling, realizing I had become an outsider at my own son's celebration. I left the reception before the cake was cut. No one stopped me. No one even noticed. I slipped out through a side door, the envelope tucked inside my purse like something poisonous I needed to keep contained. The night air felt colder than it should have. I walked slowly to my car, each step heavy, my legs trembling in a way I couldn't control. When I sat behind the wheel, I just rested my forehead against the steering wheel and breathed, long, shaky breaths that didn't feel like they belonged to me. Driving home felt like moving through fog. Every streetlight looked blurry. Every memory of Aaron flickered through my mind, sharp and painful, his first day of school, his graduation, the nights he cried in my arms after nightmares. All the moments I thought had built something unbreakable. But the truth sat in my lap, in that envelope, like a verdict. I didn't belong in his new life. When I reached my house, I didn't turn on the lights. I walked straight to the kitchen table, the same one where I used to pack Aaron's lunches, and I placed the envelope next to my blue ledger notebook. I touched the paper gently, as if it might explain itself. It didn't. The silence in the house felt heavier than it ever had. I sat there for a long time, until my phone buzzed on the table. A message from Aaron's number. For a second, my heart lifted. Maybe he realized what had happened. Maybe he wanted to apologize. But when I opened the message, the words were stiff, formal, nothing like him. Mom, we need boundaries. I'll explain more later. Please respect our space. No, I'm sorry. No, are you okay? Just distance. Cold, deliberate distance. And as I stared at the screen, a realization slowly unfolded inside me. The wedding note was only the beginning. The weeks after the wedding moved strangely. Slow in some moments, fast in others, like time itself couldn't decide how to treat me. I tried going back to my routines, morning tea, watering the plants, walking to the mailbox, but everything felt different, thinner somehow. Like the world I knew had faded a few shades. Aaron didn't call. Not once in those first days. Instead, I received a text every few days, short, stiff messages that sounded nothing like the boy I raised. Hope you're well. We're settling in. Please give us space. Don't overthink things. They had the tone of a stranger trying to avoid responsibility. Or someone writing under instruction. Each message hit me in the chest. But I didn't respond. I didn't know how to, not without breaking open the hurt sitting under my ribs. I kept the wedding envelope tucked inside my ledger, sliding it between the pages like a reminder of what silence leads to. Every time I passed by the table where the ledger sat, something inside me tightened. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I heard laughter outside. A couple walking their dog. The sound was light and easy in a way my own house hadn't felt in a long time. I stood there holding a towel, realizing something quietly, painfully simple. I had stopped living. Not dramatically. Not in a way anyone else would notice. Just slowly, one disappointment at a time, until I became someone watching life from behind a foggy window. But grief has a strange way of sharpening your senses. After enough silence, you start hearing things you once ignored. And in that silence, a small, steady thought formed: something wasn't right. And if I didn't figure it out, they were going to take more than just a seat at a wedding. A few days after that realization settled in my chest, I heard a soft knock on my front door. When I opened it, Mrs. Lorna Pike stood there holding a small container of soup. She lived across the street, retired nurse, sharp eyes, no patience for nonsense. The kind of woman who noticed everything without seeming like she was trying. I heard about the wedding, she said gently, stepping inside. Word gets around. She didn't say it with judgment. Just quiet understanding. We sat at the kitchen table, and she didn't press me to talk. She simply watched me with that steady, knowing gaze until the story spilled out: the seating, the slideshow, the envelope. When I finished, she let out a long breath and leaned back. Helena, she said slowly, I need to tell you something. I ran into Paula Hart last week at the grocery store. The mention of Kimberly's mother made my stomach tighten. She was bragging, Lorna continued, laughing about how they were guiding Aaron away from depending on you. Said they were helping him make grown-up decisions. I felt my fingers curl around the edge of the table. Lorna hesitated, then added, she also hinted that the house would be better managed once everything was settled after the wedding. Those words, settled after the wedding, sent a chill through me. Like the envelope all over again, but colder this time. Lorna leaned forward. Helena, is your name still on everything? The house? The papers? Did you ever sign anything for Aaron recently? For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mind jumped back to a memory I hadn't thought about in years, Aaron asking me to sign something after my surgery, telling me it was just to help with bill payments. A small, forgotten moment. But now it felt like a warning I hadn't listened to. And for the first time since the wedding, fear didn't make me freeze. It made me think. After Lorna left, her words kept circling in my mind like a storm gathering strength. I stood in the hallway for a long moment, staring at the closet where I kept my blue ledger notebook, the one thing in my life that never lied to me. I pulled it out and carried it to the kitchen table. The familiar weight of it steadied my shaking hands. Inside were years of records, utility bills, mortgage statements, tax receipts, and every important paper I'd ever signed since my husband passed. I flipped through the pages slowly, letting the past settle around me. Then I reached the section from the year I'd had surgery, the year Aaron helped with everything while I was bedridden. Tucked between two old electric bills was a photocopy of a form. My signature was at the bottom. I felt the air leave my lungs. The document wasn't complicated, in fact, that was the danger. It granted Aaron limited power to manage financial tasks during my recovery. Perfectly reasonable at the time. Perfectly forgettable afterward. But as I held it now, a cold realization spread through my chest. If something so small could be twisted, what else could have been done in my name? I examined my own handwriting, thin, shaky from medication, almost like someone else had written it. I remembered nothing about signing anything else. But memory is a fragile thing, especially when you trust the people around you. For the first time since the wedding, my fear sharpened into something steadier, curiosity. A quiet, growing certainty that I needed answers. I closed the ledger carefully, as if sealing a promise to myself. If they were using my trust against me, I would use the truth to find out how far they had gone. The next morning, I drove to the county records office. I didn't tell anyone, not even Lorna. Part of me felt embarrassed, and another part felt strangely protective, as if speaking my fear aloud would make it real before I was ready. The clerk behind the counter was a young man with kind eyes. When I gave him my address and asked for any recent filings under my name, he typed quickly, the glow of the computer screen reflecting off his glasses. Then he frowned. Are you expecting changes to your deed, Ms. Brooks? My stomach tightened. No, I said quietly. Why? He turned the monitor slightly so I could see. There it was, the scanned document dated 6 months before Aaron's wedding. My small house, the place I had paid for piece by piece, listed now under something called joint tenancy with right of survivorship. And next to my name. Aaron's. My breath caught in my throat. The clerk clicked another tab. There's also a pending application, he said, hesitating as if choosing his words carefully. It looks like a request to transfer full ownership. Full ownership. As in, completely out of my hands. He printed the document and placed it gently in front of me. My eyes locked on the bottom of the page, on a signature written in shaky strokes meant to look like mine. But it wasn't mine. I knew my own handwriting. I knew its loops and slants and hesitations. This wasn't it. For a moment, the room felt too bright, too loud. My heart hammered in my ears as the truth settled heavily into place. Someone had signed for me. And they were preparing to take the house, quietly, legally, permanently. I folded the paper slowly, as if touching something dangerous. If this was what they were doing behind my back, what else had already been done? Over the next 2 weeks, I moved carefully, documenting everything before they realized I was awake to it. I didn't go home after leaving the county office. If I had, I might have talked myself out of the next step. Instead, I sat in my car, gripping the deed copy like it was burning through my fingers, and texted Aaron. "Can we meet? Today, please." He replied immediately. Too immediately. "Sure. The cafe near your house?" When I walked in, he was already there, stirring a cup of coffee he clearly didn't want. His knee bounced under the table, his eyes avoiding mine. A boy preparing to lie. I sat down and placed the folded papers between us. "Aaron," I said softly, "what is this?" He glanced at the documents and swallowed hard. "Mom. I can explain." But he didn't explain. He rambled about future planning, about streamlining paperwork, about avoiding confusion later. Words that didn't belong to him. Phrases too polished, too rehearsed. "Did you ask for this?" I interrupted. "The joint deed? The transfer?" His eyes shifted away. Then finally, he whispered, "Kimberly's parents helped with the paperwork. They said it was smart. They said it protected everyone. Everyone. Except me." I pointed to the signature. "Is this mine?" He didn't answer. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. I felt grief rising like a slow, painful tide, not just for the house, but for the boy sitting across from me, the son I no longer recognized. "Aaron," I said gently, "did I sign anything else I don't remember?" His jaw tightened. "I don't know, Mom. Kimberly handled most of it." Kimberly handled it. There it was, the truth wrapped in cowardice. I leaned back, my hands trembling but my voice steady. "You should have told me," I said. "You should have protected me." He said nothing. And in that silence, something inside me hardened, not anger, but clarity. If Aaron wasn't going to protect me, I would have to protect myself. I drove home from the cafe in a daze, not crying, not shaking, just hollow. The kind of hollow where even your own heartbeat feels distant. I walked into my house, closed the door behind me, and stood in the quiet for a long moment. The blue ledger was still on the table, the wedding envelope still tucked beside it. Two symbols of everything I had held together, and everything that was now falling apart. I sat down, staring at the deed copy. The forged signature looked almost playful, loose strokes, exaggerated curves, like someone trying too hard to imitate me. And suddenly a thought hit me, sharp and unwelcome. How long had they been planning this? How many conversations had happened without me, about me, as if I were already gone? My hands trembled, but this time not from grief. From something else, something I hadn't felt since Aaron was a child fighting bullies at school. Instinct. Self-protection. The first spark of resolve. I picked up my phone. For the first time in weeks, the house didn't feel suffocating, it felt like a place I needed to defend. I opened the App Store and typed voice recorder. A simple tool. Something small. Something private. When it downloaded, I tested it, recording a soft whisper, "This is Helena. Today is the day I start keeping my own record." Hearing my voice play back made something inside me steady. Proof of truth in a world that suddenly felt full of lies. I saved the file and placed the phone beside the ledger. If they wanted everything to be handled behind closed doors, it's fine. From now on, I would keep the doors open, with evidence, with dates, with my own voice. This time, I wouldn't be silent. The next morning, I called Lorna and asked if she knew any good attorneys. She didn't hesitate. "You need someone who doesn't scare easy," she said. "Someone who listens. Talk to attorney Farah Anwar. She helped my sister with an estate mess years ago." By noon, I was sitting in Farah's small but organized office, soft tan walls, neatly stacked files, a single plant by the window. The kind of space that felt calm, deliberate. Farah greeted me with a steady, warm handshake. She looked young, but her eyes carried a quiet sharpness, the sort of person who saw more than most people said out loud. "Tell me everything," she said gently. So I did. The wedding note, the seating, the deed, the forgery, Aaron's behavior, the pressure from Kimberly's parents. She didn't interrupt, didn't rush me, didn't treat any part of it like family drama. When I finished, she leaned forward, hands folded. Helena, what you're describing isn't just hurtful. It may be illegal. Especially the deed change. She tapped the forged signature. This alone is a problem for them. My breath wavered. But I don't want to hurt Aaron. Farah nodded. I understand. But protecting yourself isn't hurting him. And if someone around him pressured or manipulated him into this, that's another issue we'll uncover. She pulled out a small notepad. Here's what we need: every document you have, every text message, every voicemail. Nothing is too small. And Helena, she paused, making sure I met her eyes. Stop confronting them alone. From now on, anything important goes through me. A weight lifted off my chest, not relief, exactly, but recognition. For the first time since the wedding, I wasn't standing alone at the edge of a cliff. I had someone on my side. And someone on theirs was finally within reach of the truth. A few days later, Farah asked me to meet her at the county records office. Her voice over the phone had been calm, but there was something underneath it, a quiet urgency that made my stomach tighten. When I arrived, she was already speaking with the senior clerk, an older woman with silver hair and the kind of expression that said she'd seen everything. Farah motioned me closer. Ms. Brooks, the clerk said kindly, we located the supporting documents attached to the deed changes. Supporting documents. I didn't know those existed. She stepped aside so we could see the computer screen. There were scanned forms, notarization logs, and, what made my breath catch, emails. Farah clicked on the first one. It was sent from an account under the name Paula Hart. The subject line read, Request from Helena Brooks, please process transfer. My heart thudded painfully. The body of the email was worse. As discussed, I want the house in my son's name to avoid confusion later. Please proceed as soon as possible. Then, at the bottom, thank you, Helena B. A fake signature. A fake voice. Someone pretending to be me in writing, coldly, efficiently. Farah exhaled slowly. This isn't carelessness, she said. This is deliberate misrepresentation. Maybe fraud. I felt my knees weaken. Not because of fear this time, but because the truth was finally standing in front of me with its face uncovered. Farah printed the emails, the deed attachments, the digital logs. Each sheet felt heavier than the last. Then she looked at me with a steadiness that sent a strange calm through my chest. Helena, we now have enough to stop the transfer. And possibly more. The clerk stepped closer, lowering her voice. And if you want to file a fraud complaint, we'll support that. I swallowed, the weight of everything finally settling. The wedding wasn't the start of their plan. It was the middle. I had just stumbled into the part they never expected me to see. 2 days after Farah gathered the documents, I came home to an envelope wedged tightly in my mailbox. A thick one, the kind that never brings anything good. My name was typed on the front. No return address. For a moment, I just stood on the porch, staring at it. Something in my chest tightened, that old familiar ache that comes when you know a blow is coming but you're too tired to brace for it. I opened it anyway. Inside was a letter from a law firm I'd never heard of, representing Aaron and Kimberly. My hands began to tremble as I read. Our clients request that you cease all interference in their marital financial planning. Your recent actions have caused emotional distress and instability. You are advised to cooperate with the formalization of the house transfer, which you verbally agreed to. Verbal agreement. A phrase that sank its teeth into me. I had never said anything of the sort. Never even imagined it. The letter went on, failure to comply may result in legal action, including petitions to evaluate your capacity to manage your own affairs. There it was. The threat. Softly worded. Highly deliberate. A capacity evaluation, the kind used when someone wants control over an elder's assets. For a moment, my entire body went cold. The house. My autonomy. My dignity. All balanced on someone else's willingness to lie. I sat down on the porch step, clutching the letter, the wind brushing against my face like a warning. But then something shifted inside me. Instead of crying, I felt anger rise, slow, hot, and incredibly clear. They wanted to scare me. Corner me. Make me sign out of fear. But I had Farah now. And I had the truth. I folded the letter carefully, stood up, and walked back into my house with a steadiness I didn't recognize. If they wanted a war, they were about to learn who they were fighting. I arrived at Farah's office the next morning with the threatening letter clenched in my hand. She took one look at my face and didn't even ask what was wrong, she simply held out her palm. When she read the letter, her expression didn't change. No outrage. No surprise. Just a slow, measured inhale. This, she said calmly, is exactly what I expected. Her composure steadied me more than anything else could have. They're trying to intimidate you, she continued. But they've made a critical mistake. She tapped the phrase verbal agreement with her finger, almost gently. This claim directly contradicts the forged email they submitted. They can't say you verbally agreed and also pretend you wrote that email. The two stories break each other. For a moment, I just stared at her. I hadn't even thought of that. Farah pulled out a clean legal pad and began writing quickly, her handwriting neat, assured. Here's what we're doing, she said. We're drafting a counter-response. We're also filing a fraud complaint and a petition to confirm your sole ownership of the house. My breath caught. All of that? Right now? She nodded. They escalated. Now we escalate smarter. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. Helena, they walked into their own trap. This letter isn't a threat to you, it's evidence for us. I felt something shift inside me then. Not fear. Not even anger. Control. For the first time in months, I felt the ground steady beneath my feet. Farah slid the legal pad toward me. At this point, the safest place for the truth is on the record. I swallowed hard. This wasn't just defense anymore. This was the turning point. The moment I stopped being their target and became their consequence. In the days that followed, Farah gave me a list, not long, but precise. Collect everything, she told me. Anything that shows their intentions, their tone, their pressure. Paper doesn't forget what people try to hide. So I started gathering. First, I opened my blue ledger notebook and slipped the forged deed copy and the threatening letter into its front pocket. Then I added the wedding envelope, the little strip of paper that had become the first clue in a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Next came the texts. Every cold, distant message Aaron had sent since the wedding. Every vague instruction to give them space. Every line that sounded more like Kimberly than him. I screenshotted them all, naming each file with the date and time. Farah's voice echoed in my mind, documentation is protection. Then came the voicemails. Paula had left a few over the months, soft, politely aggressive messages about letting the young couple build their own life and knowing when to step aside gracefully. When I played them back now, they sounded different. Sharper. Rehearsed. Like someone guiding a narrative instead of starting a conversation. I saved each one. After that, I made a handwritten list of witnesses Farah had asked me to consider. Lorna, who overheard Paula bragging. The county clerk who had printed the forged email. A distant cousin who had whispered to me at the rehearsal dinner, I think they're trying to push you out. As I wrote their names, something settled in my chest, something unfamiliar, but strong. I wasn't helpless. Not anymore. The evidence wasn't just piling up. It was forming a story. Not the one Kimberly's family tried to create, but the true one. The one where silence finally had something louder beside it, proof. A few days after I finished organizing the evidence, my phone buzzed with a notification from a cousin. Are you okay? The message read. Saw something online, didn't want to assume. My stomach tightened. Online? About me? I opened the link she'd sent, and there it was, a post on Kimberly's social media. A long paragraph written in that polished, passive-aggressive tone she used so well, sometimes starting a new life means protecting boundaries from toxic influences. Some people can't let go and create drama where there should be love. Grateful for my husband and his strength during this difficult time. She didn't name me. But she didn't have to. The comment said everything. So sorry you're dealing with this. Some parents just don't know when to step back. You guys deserve peace. I can't stand older people who play the victim. Each one landed like a small slap. For a moment, I felt the old panic rise, the fear of being misunderstood, misjudged, painted as something I wasn't. I even reached for my keyboard, fingers trembling, ready to defend myself. But then I stopped. Farah's voice returned to me, steady and grounding. Let them talk. Noise fades. Evidence doesn't. I closed the app. Later that evening, a few neighbors avoided eye contact as I collected my mail. Word had spread, just as Kimberly wanted. The isolation tightened like a cold ring around my chest. But this time, I didn't crumble. Instead, I walked inside, opened my ledger, and added screenshots of the post and comments. If Kimberly wanted to build a story where I was the villain, then she had just handed me another piece of proof showing exactly how far she was willing to go. The next turning point didn't arrive with a letter or a phone call. It came in the form of a quiet knock at my door one evening, just as I was putting the kettle on. When I opened it, I found my cousin Marjorie standing there, arms crossed tightly, eyes darting like she was afraid someone had followed her. She stepped inside quickly, shutting the door behind her. "Aunt Helena," she whispered, "I need to show you something." She pulled out her phone, hands trembling, and opened a group chat I didn't recognize, a thread filled with messages from Kimberly, Paula, and several relatives who had been sitting near the front during the wedding. My breath caught as Marjorie scrolled. There were screenshots of Kimberly describing me as clingy and manipulative, claiming I had tried to insert myself into their married life. Paula chimed in, adding, "We're doing Aaron a favor. She's holding him back." But the worst was a message sent the day after the wedding: "We need to push the evaluation sooner. If we frame it as concern for her mental state, people will understand." Evaluation. The same word from the lawyer's letter. Repeated here, casually, like they were discussing a grocery list. Marjorie swallowed hard. "I didn't agree with any of this," she said. "But I didn't know how deep it went until now. They're planning something, Helena. And people are taking their side because they think you're declining." Declining. The word hurt more than I expected. For a moment, everything inside me wavered: grief, disbelief, the sting of betrayal from people I'd fed, cared for, loved. But the wavering passed. I took Marjorie's phone gently, screenshotting every message, every thread. "Thank you," I whispered. Not because it softened the blow, but because it gave me something far more precious: clarity. They weren't just trying to take my house. They were trying to rewrite my sanity to justify it. By the next morning, I could barely swallow a sip of tea. The word declining kept echoing in my mind, sharp and poisonous. The idea that people I'd known for years as family were whispering about my sanity, discussing it like a strategy, it settled over me like a heavy, unwanted coat. I called Farah and told her everything. She listened silently, letting me finish before speaking in a steady, controlled tone I had come to depend on. "Helena," she said, "they're building a narrative. It's a common tactic in cases like this. If they can paint you as confused or unstable, it weakens your position." My stomach twisted. Can they actually do it? Force some kind of evaluation? "They can try," she said, "but trying and succeeding are two different things." Then her voice softened. "We're not going to wait for them to make the first move. We're going to take that tool out of their hands." Within the hour, I was sitting in a small clinic with a doctor Farah trusted, Dr. Hahn, a quiet, precise man who reviewed my situation with calm professionalism. The evaluation wasn't invasive. Just a series of questions, memory checks, practical tasks. Nothing I couldn't handle. At the end, he smiled kindly. "Ms. Brooks, your cognitive function is perfectly normal. There is no indication of impairment." He signed the formal report and handed it to me. When I left the clinic, the sun felt warmer than it had in weeks. I sent a copy of the evaluation to Farah. She replied instantly, "Good. They can't use that angle anymore. Now their threats become more revealing than your actions." As I walked back to my car, I felt something shift inside me, a quiet reclaiming of ground they thought they could steal with lies. The meeting took place in a conference room so spotless it felt sterile, gray walls, glass table, chairs that squeaked if you breathed too hard. Farah sat beside me, calm and composed, her hands folded neatly on her legal pad. Across from us sat Aaron, Kimberly, and their attorney, a stiff-shouldered man who looked like he practiced frowning in the mirror. The moment I walked in, Aaron wouldn't meet my eyes. Kimberly did, with that same polished, brittle smile she reserved for moments where she believed she was winning. Their attorney started with a rehearsed tone. "Mrs. Brooks, we're here today to avoid unnecessary conflict. My clients are willing to offer a compromise regarding the house." Farah's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Let's hear it." He slid a printed document across the table. "If Helena agrees to formally transfer the deed to Aaron now, she may continue living in the home for a set period, subject to reasonable rules for everyone's comfort." Rules. The word hung in the air like smoke. I scanned the paper. It wasn't a compromise. It was an eviction with training wheels. Farah didn't touch the document. Instead, she opened her folder and laid out the forged deed copy, the threatening letter, the cognitive report, and finally, the printed email Paula had sent under my name. Kimberly's smile faltered. Farah's voice remained steady. "Before we discuss compromise, let's address criminal exposure. This email alone is grounds for a fraud complaint." Paula broke. She slammed her palm on the table. "Oh, for heaven's sake. It wasn't personal. Someone had to move things along. Helena makes everything difficult." The room went silent. Her outburst wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't polished. It was the truth slipping out. Aaron's face drained of color. Kimberly stiffened, her jaw tightening. Farah leaned back smoothly. "Thank you, Mrs. Hart. That clarifies everything. No settlement was reached. No agreement was signed. When we left, the air felt different, brittle, charged. They had come to box me in. But instead, they had shown the judge exactly who they really were." After the disastrous settlement meeting, Farah and I walked out of the conference room into the hallway's harsh fluorescent lights. My legs felt shaky, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of everything that had just cracked open. Paula's outburst. Kimberly's silence. Aaron's hollow stare. Farah slowed her step and gently touched my arm. "Helena," she said, "we need to talk before we file anything." We found a quiet bench outside the building. People passed by us, lawyers, assistants, strangers, all with their own troubles, their own stories. But for the first time, I felt like mine wasn't drowning me. It was rising. Farah opened her folder, flipping to a page marked with a blue tab. "This," she explained, "is the settlement offer I can push for privately. It stops the transfer, voids any forged documents, and ends the threats. You'd keep the house with no further interference. A private victory. Clean. Quiet. Unseen." Then she slid another document forward. "And this," she said, "is the petition for open court. A public hearing. Evidence entered into record. Witness testimony. It will expose what they did to everyone. Including your son." The air between us tightened. I looked down at my hands. They were steady. Stronger than they'd been in months. "What happens if we go public?" I asked. Farah didn't sugarcoat it. "It will be painful. They'll fight harder. They'll smear your name again. But the truth will stand. And they won't be able to rewrite the story afterward." I thought of the wedding note. The social posts. The forged signature. The evaluation threat. The pressure. The silence. Then I thought of my house, my history, my dignity. I lifted my chin. "File it," I said quietly. "All of it. I want this on record. Farah gave a slow, approving nod. And as we stood to leave, I felt something inside me settle into place, like a door clicking shut from my side this time. In my head, something clicked shut. This would end, not with fear, but with choice. And the trial was coming. The morning of the hearing arrived colder than I expected. Not weather cold, something deeper, something that settled under my skin as I dressed slowly, choosing a simple navy blouse and black slacks. Nothing fancy. Just respectful. Steady. When I stepped outside, the air felt heavier, like the world knew what today meant. I drove to the courthouse in silence, my hands gripping the wheel, my blue ledger sitting on the passenger seat like an old friend. The courthouse was an older building, tall columns, wide steps, a place that seemed to echo every footstep with a reminder, truth comes here whether it's ready or not. Farah was waiting near the entrance, calm as always, a stack of files tucked under her arm. When she saw me, she smiled gently. "You're ready," she said. And somehow, I believed her. Inside, the hallway was crowded. Strangers murmured, doors opened and closed, lawyers paced with papers in hand. Then I saw them. Erin. Kimberly. Paula and her husband Peter standing behind them like a wall made of polished smiles and quiet calculation. Erin's gaze flickered toward me, brief, brittle, almost apologetic, before he looked away. Kimberly didn't look at me at all. Paula, on the other hand, stared like she was already preparing to speak on my behalf, to tell the world how concerned they all were. Farah stepped a little closer to me, a silent shield. When the courtroom doors opened, the clerk called our case. The sound echoed, sharp and final. My heart hammered once, then steadied. This was it. No more shadows. No more whispers. I wasn't here as the mother they tried to silence. I was here as Helena Brooks, the woman they underestimated. And today, the truth would finally stand in the light. The courtroom felt colder than the hallway. Not physically, the temperature was fine, but there was a kind of chill that comes from being watched, measured, judged before a word is spoken. Rows of benches held strangers, a few curious relatives, and at least one neighbor who tried not to make eye contact with me. Farah and I took our seats at the petitioner's table. Across from us sat Erin and Kimberly, their attorney arranged neatly between them like a shield they didn't deserve but desperately needed. Kimberly's posture was perfect, chin lifted. Erin's hands were clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The room quieted, a hush so complete it felt like the world held its breath. "Counsel," the judge said, "you may begin." Farah stood. Her voice was steady, measured, the voice of someone who knew the truth had gravity on its side. "Your Honor, today we intend to show that my client, Ms. Helena Brooks, has been subjected to calculated manipulation, fraudulent documentation, and coordinated attempts to undermine her legal rights to her home. We will present forged communications, unauthorized deed alterations, and evidence of coercive behavior." Her words fell like small stones, calm, heavy, undeniable. When Kimberly's attorney rose, his tone changed the room's air instantly. Smooth. Polished. Practiced. "Your Honor," he began, "this case is not about fraud. It is about a misunderstanding. A mother struggling with boundaries. A young couple attempting to manage their future responsibly. We intend to show that Mrs. Brooks has been confused, emotional, and increasingly unstable. Unstable. There it was again. Their favorite word. He glanced at me, not kindly, and continued, "My clients only seek peace. Peace. While trying to take my home, my name, my sanity." I felt Farah place a hand near my elbow, a quiet reminder, let them speak. Let them dig. This stage wasn't for my emotions. It was for the record. And the record was about to break their story apart. Farah stood once more, calm as ever, and approached the evidence table. The entire courtroom shifted with her, a collective lean forward, a silent curiosity rising like heat. "Your Honor," she said, "we would like to begin with the timeline of property alterations." She lifted the forged deed copy and placed it on the projector. The scanned document appeared on the large screen behind her, every line magnified, my house, my name, the transfer, and the shaky imitation of my signature. A murmur moved across the room. Farah pointed to the date. This filing occurred 6 months before the wedding. Ms. Brooks was never informed. She did not give consent. And, most critically, she did not sign this document. The judge studied it closely. Miss Brooks, he said gently, is this your signature? I stood. My voice was steady, to my own surprise. No, Your Honor. It's not. I never signed anything like this. Aaron sank lower in his seat. Next, Farah pulled up the email, the one Paula had sent pretending to be me. The forged request filled the room, every word a stain. Farah read aloud, I want the house in my son's name to avoid confusion later. My stomach twisted, just hearing it. Farah continued, this email originated from an account belonging to Paula Hart. Digital logs confirm it was not sent from Ms. Brooks' devices or location. Kimberly stiffened. Paula's face flushed red. The judge scribbled notes. Then Farah pressed play on a voicemail Paula had left. It's time to step aside gracefully, Helena. Let the young couple build their future without interference. The tone was sweet. The message was anything but. Gasps rippled through the benches. Farah stepped back, letting the weight of the evidence settle. Piece by piece, the room was seeing them, not as a polished, generous family, but as architects of a quiet, dangerous scheme. And for the first time, I felt the balance of the room tip toward the truth. When Farah finished presenting the evidence, Kimberly's attorney rose with a confidence that felt more forced than before. He straightened his tie, approached the witness stand, and gave me a sympathetic smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mrs. Brooks, he began, I understand this has been emotional for you. He said emotional the way someone says irrational. Carefully. Deliberately. I'd like to ask a few questions about your memory. You had surgery several years ago, correct? During that period, is it possible you signed documents you don't remember? Farah objected immediately. Your Honor, this line of questioning assumes facts not in evidence and contradicts the cognitive assessment already provided. The judge raised an eyebrow. I've reviewed the report. Mrs. Brooks is fully competent. Proceed carefully, counselor. But the attorney pressed on, clearly counting on persuasion instead of proof. Mrs. Brooks, are you certain this signature isn't yours? Stress and age can cause confusion. Something inside me steadied, the same clarity I'd felt in Farah's office, in the county records room, at the settlement table. Yes, I said, meeting his gaze directly. I am certain. I've signed documents for decades. I know what my handwriting looks like. He opened his mouth to continue, but before he could, Paula let out a sharp, frustrated sound from the gallery. Oh, for heaven's sake, she snapped, standing halfway. She's making a big deal over nothing. We only sent that email to move things along. She drags everything out. The room froze. Kimberly's attorney's face went pale. Aaron stared at the floor. Kimberly whispered something harsh under her breath. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Hart, you will sit down immediately. Paula sank back into her seat, lips tight, eyes flashing. But the damage was done. Her outburst sliced clean through the polished narrative they'd tried to build, revealing the truth underneath. They hadn't just overstepped. They had orchestrated. Manipulated. Interfered. And now, under oath and under pressure, their mask was cracking in full view of the court. Farah didn't rush. She let the silence after Paula's outburst settle, thick and heavy, like dust in a room no one has dared to clean. Kimberly's attorney sat frozen, his pen still raised as if he'd forgotten what he meant to write. Then Farah moved. Calmly, she approached the evidence table, picked up my phone, the one she'd submitted earlier, and addressed the judge. Your Honor, with the court's permission, we'd like to play a recording taken 3 days after the wedding. The judge nodded. Proceed. My heart thudded once, then went quiet. I remembered that conversation well. I had recorded it because I didn't trust my own memory anymore, not with so many people insisting I was imagining things. Farah pressed play. Aaron's voice filled the courtroom. I know it hurt her, Kimberly, but we had to send a message. She needs to stop clinging. She needs to understand this is our life now. The room stiffened. Then a second voice, Kimberly's, smooth, irritated, unmistakable. She'll be out of that house before Christmas. My parents already talked to the lawyer. It's basically done. A gasp broke somewhere behind me. Someone whispered, "Oh my God," Aaron's face went gray. Kimberly stared straight ahead, jaw locked, her perfect posture finally cracking under the weight of her own words. Paula reached for her daughter's arm, but Kimberly pulled away sharply. Farah let the final seconds of silence play before stopping the audio. Then she spoke, softly, but with a force that filled every corner of the room. Your Honor, the defendants claim Mrs. Brooks is confused, unstable, and obstructive. Yet here is their own plan, in their own voices, admitting to coercive intent and coordinated action to remove her from her home. The judge leaned back slowly, expression unreadable. But the air had changed. Decisively. Irreversibly. Their story had collapsed in seconds, not because of my tears, not because of my pain, but because the truth finally spoke louder than their lies. The judge didn't speak right away. He sat with his hands steepled beneath his chin, eyes moving slowly between the forged documents, the printed emails, the legal filings, and finally, my face. Then he looked at Aaron. Mr. Brooks, he said, voice low but unwavering, do you understand the gravity of what we've just heard? Aaron swallowed hard. His voice cracked. Yes, Your Honor. The judge nodded once, then turned to Kimberly and her parents. And you three, what you attempted here is not just inappropriate. It is manipulative, deceptive, and in direct violation of property and elder protection laws. Paula opened her mouth to object, but the judge lifted a hand. Sit down, Mrs. Hart. She did. Farah remained still beside me, but I could feel the quiet strength radiating from her, the certainty that we were finally standing on solid ground. The judge cleared his throat. Here is my ruling. Every sound in the courtroom dissolved. First, he said, this court confirms that Ms. Helena Brooks is the sole legal and equitable owner of her property. The attempted deed alterations are void. My breath caught. Kimberly stiffened. Aaron sagged in his chair. Second, the judge continued, any future attempt to transfer, modify, or encumber Ms. Brooks's property without her direct, verified consent is prohibited and will result in immediate legal action. Paula's face paled. Third, the forged communications and coordinated actions will be referred for formal review and investigation by the district attorney's office. A ripple of shock moved through the room. Fourth, the respondents will reimburse Ms. Brooks's legal fees in full. Kimberly's attorney clenched his jaw. Aaron dropped his head into his hands. The judge paused, his expression softening only when he looked at me. Ms. Brooks, you deserved honesty from the people you trusted. Today, at least, you have justice. For the first time in months, I felt air return to my lungs, clean, steady, and entirely my own. When the judge adjourned the hearing, the courtroom erupted into scattered whispers, people gathering their belongings, murmuring to one another, glancing at me with a mixture of sympathy and uneasy fascination. I stayed seated for a moment. Not because I was afraid to stand, but because I needed to feel the weight of what had just happened settle inside me. A weight that wasn't crushing anymore, just real. Farah touched my shoulder gently. You did well, she said. Take your time. As she stepped away to speak with the clerk, I saw Aaron standing near the exit. He hesitated, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, eyes fixed on the floor. When our gazes finally met, he walked toward me slowly, like approaching a door he wasn't sure he had the right to open. Mom, he said softly. His voice was raw, stripped of all the rehearsed calm he'd used these past months. I'm sorry. It came out shaky, barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for things to go this far. I thought, he stopped, words collapsing inside him. I was trying to keep the peace. I looked at him, really looked at him. This wasn't the confident smile from the wedding photos. This was a boy who had followed someone else's map and gotten lost. Aaron, I said gently, peace doesn't come from letting people hurt the ones you love. He blinked fast, tears gathering. Can we fix this? Please? For a long moment, the question hung between us like a fragile bridge. Then I shook my head slowly. I don't know, I said, voice calm. And fixing something requires honesty from both sides. That wasn't there for a long time. He nodded, eyes downcast. Not angry. Just small. I touched his arm lightly, not a promise, not a reconciliation. Just a simple acknowledgement of the boy I raised. And then, gently, I stepped past him. Not out of cruelty. But because I needed to walk forward without someone else deciding the path beneath my feet. The day after the hearing, I woke up to a house that felt different. Not new, the walls were still the same soft ivory I painted years ago, and the morning sunlight still crept through the curtains in familiar lines. But the air felt lighter. Like it belonged to me again. For months, every corner of my home had carried a quiet fear, the dread that someone could take it away with a signature or a lie. But now, as I walked from room to room, touching the backs of chairs, straightening a picture frame, opening the kitchen curtains, the house felt solid beneath my hands. It was mine. Unequivocally mine. Later that week, I went through every drawer, every closet, every shelf, clearing out old paperwork and sorting through memories. Not because I needed proof anymore, the court had given me that, but because I wanted to choose what stayed and what left. I donated clothes I hadn't worn in years. I boxed up Aaron's old belongings, not in anger, but in understanding that life moves forward even when love lingers behind. Then, unexpectedly, I made a decision I never thought I would. I put up a small notice at the community center, room for rent, for a quiet, respectful tenant. Inquire within. Not out of necessity. Out of intention. A week later, a retired librarian named Judith moved into the spare room, gentle, observant, carrying her own stack of quiet stories. We shared morning tea, evening news, and soft conversation that didn't ask more of me than I was willing to give. And in those simple moments, I realized something: rebuilding doesn't always begin with grand gestures. Sometimes it begins with opening a window, clearing a shelf, or letting someone kind share your space. For the first time in a long time, my life felt like it was filling back up with things I chose. It took me a few weeks before I opened the blue ledger again. Not because I feared what was inside, those days had passed, but because I wanted to approach it with a clear mind. A steady heart. One quiet evening, after Judith had gone to bed and the house had settled into its familiar nighttime creaks, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea. The ledger was where it always sat, tucked neatly beside the salt shaker and an old ceramic bowl. I opened it slowly, flipping through the pages of receipts, legal letters, and printed messages, the breadcrumbs of a path I never asked to walk. And then I reached the page where I'd stored it. The wedding note. The little strip of paper that once felt like a dagger pressed against my ribs. I lifted it carefully. The edges were slightly worn now, softened from being handled in moments of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak. For words stared back at me, "You shouldn't be here." For a long moment, I simply held it between my fingers, feeling neither the sting nor the ache that once came with it. Just recognition. Recognition of the woman who had received it. Recognition of how far she had come since. I turned the note over. The back was blank, clean, untouched. I picked up a pen and wrote slowly, letting each letter settle into the page, "I was here." Underneath, a second line, "I am still here." The words weren't dramatic. They weren't meant for anyone else. They were for me, a quiet reclaiming of space, of dignity, of presence. I slid the note back into the ledger, not as a wound, but as a reminder. Some messages are meant to break you. But they only succeed if you let them. And I hadn't. Life didn't snap back into place after the hearing. It didn't suddenly become perfect or peaceful or easy. Healing rarely works that way. Instead, it came in small pieces, tiny moments that began stitching themselves together until I realized I could breathe again without checking the door twice or listening for footsteps that weren't mine. I started taking morning walks. Just around the block, slow and steady, letting the cold air clear the corners of my mind. Sometimes neighbors waved. Some avoided eye contact. But the difference was simple. I no longer shaped myself around their opinions. A few people, the ones who believed the rumors Kimberly posted, tried to approach me with half-hearted smiles or questions disguised as concern. I learned to nod politely and keep moving. Truth didn't need their approval. It already had its place, in the court records, in the evidence, in the quiet stability of my own home. Occasionally, I'd see Aaron's name blink on my phone. A short text, thinking of you. Hope you're okay. No pressure. No expectations. Just fragments of someone still trying to find his way back to himself. Maybe someday we'll talk longer. Maybe we won't. Love doesn't vanish overnight, but trust, that's something rebuilt only by actions, not apologies. One afternoon, I sat on my porch with Judith, sipping tea as the sun dipped behind the rooftops. She asked softly, "Do you ever regret taking it to court?" I watched the sky shift colors, gold, then orange, then the soft quiet of evening. "No," I said. "I regret staying silent for as long as I did. But I don't regret standing up." The world didn't clap for me. There were no grand celebrations. Just a calm settling in my bones, the kind that comes when you choose dignity over approval. In the end, I didn't get back the son I once knew. But I got myself back. And sometimes, that's the real victory. If you liked this story, please like, subscribe, and share it. If you have a unique story of your own, share it in the comments below. Thank you for listening.